Hey there, welcome to episode 40 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon on August 14th, 2024. It is a Wednesday here in Vegas, probably where you are as well. Today we're going to speak about the earthquake in 1990, my first earthquake, the Upland Quake in Southern California. By earthquake standards, it was pretty tame, but it was also an interesting time. So let's get started. First of all, quaggling sand. What is that? What is quaggling sand? Quaggling sand is what you might call pins and needles. It is the sensation you feel when circulation returns to your limbs, your hand, your foot, your head, maybe. when you've been sitting funny, laying on your hand, whatever the case may be. So it's a term I coined when I was very young, probably 4 years old, maybe 3, I don't know. Quaggling sand, there it is. It's a show, a channel, an audio program about random stories and whatnot. One of these days I should see if anybody would like to be a guest and rap about that time you were in an earthquake. But for now, that would be just me. So let's get to it. Wherever you found this audio program, hopefully you are able to find the show notes in the episode description. One of these days I'll have a website and you can find them there too. But for the moment, the show notes in the episode description, wherever you found this audio program, I'm going to flip through that real quick and get on with the show. This is the usual thing. I will read the summary now. The Upland Quake, or as we called it at the time, the Mount Baldy Quake, on February 28, 1990, at about 3:43 p.m. on that Wednesday. My first earthquake, quite an adventure. Let's talk about it. There are a couple of links for today's episode. The first two, as usual, shameless self-promotion. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. These are my usual out-of-band promotional link sites. The buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile page. It's kind of a free form, something like a link tree or something. I can add some links there. I have links to all of my audio programs. I have links to my favorite coffee beans. You are under no obligation to spend money on either of these sites, but I do use them as a sort of an anchor point. I say out of band as in I don't have to manage them. They're not websites that I have any control over, hence the editor for Buy Me a Coffee being so horrible. But it is what it is. They are useful. They're often used in open source projects for people to ask for donations. But you're under no obligation to spend money. But I do use these just as a way to get the word out in a consistent manner. So I don't have to manage these websites. Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo, more of an announcement type site. One of these days when I get my my websites, plural, up and running, which I've been talking about for years now at this point, but too many other more important things. I can do audio programs without a website, although I will be personally happier when I have both. But the Buy Me a Coffee and Ko-fi placements will remain into the future because they do what they do. And excuse me, now a couple of episode related links. A Wikipedia page for the Upland Quake. I'm going to guess there's a geological survey link for this, but I went with quick and easy. The 1990 quake, the details, the epicenter, some general rundown on the situation. It was my first year at Mudd, second semester, Harvey Mudd College. That's basically where this story takes place. REM was the main song on our earthquake soundtrack. I have a YouTube link to the official REM video for It's the End of the World as We Know It. And what is liquefaction? Luckily, Harvey Mudd College was not built in a liquefaction region, nor is Upland. It has to do with whether you're groundwater, I guess, or whether water is in the ground. So liquefaction region, when an earthquake takes place there, as the waves move through the region, it is possible for the liquefaction region to become fluid-like and start shifting around. Not ideal. Why do I point this out? Well, that comes into play at the end of the story. So let's begin at the beginning, I suppose. I was born in New Jersey. I grew up in the Phoenix area, so I had no real exposure to earthquakes at any time. I had been to California, of course. I had never been in an earthquake then. All of my other travels, I had been through hurricanes in Florida, and I had been through the hottest day on record in Phoenix, 122 degrees that one day. No earthquakes that I know of. I don't recall any sort of formal or even informal warnings or training or advice about what to do in case of an earthquake, which is odd for a college, which I'm going to guess any institution of learning like that, a high school or a college, anywhere where you're inviting people from other places to come and converge. It seems like you'd want to give them the rundown. Like, if we were in Florida, hopefully they would suggest what to do in a hurricane. If we were in the Midwest somewhere, a tornado. California, you would think they would say earthquake. Probably in Phoenix, they would just say, bring a lot of water wherever you go. Stay hydrated. But yeah, we never really got official, here's what to do. I think everybody just sort of assumed. Of course, everybody had seen earthquakes in movies and television. Who doesn't remember Laverne and Shirley when they moved to California? Their beds were rolling around in their bedroom with the earthquake. That was a weird show. But anyway, I had no real experience with earthquakes, so that was about to change. I seem to remember being advised, either it was like a real statement or just kind of a commentary made here and there, that the buildings, all of the buildings on the Harvey Mudd College campus to that point, and I'm going to assume they continued with that architecture, were and probably still are made of cinder block. So they're not, it was kind of a brownish cinder block, indestructible material. You could hammer kind of masonry nails into it and hang things, and didn't seem to damage anything, but there was no internal frame. So the buildings were very rigid, and they were built to withstand just about anything, but they were not a flexible structure. So they would well, we'll find out. So just before the earthquake, day of, I was working in the admissions office of Harvey Mudd College. After lunch, I had a work-study job there, so probably, I don't know if I worked there 1 day a week or 2 days. I think it was 1 day. Might have been 2 days. So Wednesday after lunch, go down, work for like an hour or something. Then off to chemistry lab. So I'm going to guess, I don't remember I think our chemistry lab's afternoon class started at 2:45, maybe. I seem to remember afternoon classes started at 1:15 to 2:45, maybe. Something like that. So I was working in the admissions office and just chatting, doing my office job thing, probably some filing. And all of a sudden, I don't know why I wrote when a sudden in my notes. When all of a sudden. By the way, I don't know why people say all of a sudden. I don't know what that means. All of a sudden, very loud noise, like boom, and a sense that the building was hit by something. I remember saying myself, I said, it felt like a truck just ran into the building. And we're looking out the windows and everybody's like, oh, that was weird. I don't remember anyone saying that was an earthquake. If they did say it, they were doing it more of was that an earthquake? It didn't really feel like swaying or rolling. Not that I didn't know what to expect or what it could have been, but looking back, it just felt like a truck hit the building. So it felt like a substantial object impacted the building, and like a billiard ball on a pool table, on a billiards table, the force was passed into the building, and given the nature of the construction of the buildings, a very inelastic collision. the building rocked, boom. And then that was it. Like, oh, that was really weird. That was all I knew. So then I headed off to chem lab. And again, when we even got to the chemistry lab, there wasn't much in the way of, did you feel that earthquake? So I'm gonna assume that the California contingent, the people that had been through a quake or two, were not impressed. So they didn't think to mention it. And again, we were not really told. There was not really a formal, basic, here's what you do in case of an emergency. But nobody said, by the way, if the building starts shaking, specifically here, go to a gathering area, go outside. Yeah. So it just seemed to be one of the, oh yeah, something happened, or not even a mention. So it didn't seem to get the attention it would eventually deserve. So counting down, now we're in Chem Lab, the upper floor of one of the academics buildings, the Keck Laboratory building, I think they now call it. I think it was just Keck, but I think since they've added more buildings to the academic complex at Harvey Mudd College on the campus there, that I think it's now the Keck Laboratory building or something like that. But it was just Keck. I think it was Keck and Parsons, something like that. So we were in Keck, and and that's somebody's name, obviously, Keck. So the tallest building on campus was the library, Sprague Library. It's 6 floors. And I think the chem lab we were in was on the 3rd floor of this 3-story building. So none of the buildings on campus were tall other than the library. So I believe we were on the top floor, 3rd story. Our lab class was split across 2 actual spaces. So there were 2 freshman chemistry labs, and they were split down the middle with a wall with some windows. So, half in one, half in the other. You could see through the window, so you could see your classmates. And the professor Caruxis that we had there for that second semester was, she was a well-respected professor, pretty cool, actually. And so she was on one side or the other, and people were doing their thing. Chemistry lab. I don't remember what the actual lab experiment was. I do know there were thermometers on one of the lab benches. No, that was, there was glassware around. I remember because this will become part of the noise. So glassware. We are my lab partner is my roommate Kevin. We are using a lab bench on the the wall opposite the glass divided wall. It's not all glass, but 2 windows. So the window wall. So we're on the opposite side. I'm going to say, I think it was a east-west orientation. So we were on the east wall, and then the window wall was kind of in the middle. So it was west. And then the other lab, so we were in the east lab of the pair on the east wall. So we were way over there. And Kevin said, oh, I need to go ask Professor Caruxis something. And I said, okay. So she was in the west lab. So he walked through the doorway. Now we were probably 5 feet from, we were very near the doorway, the eastmost doorway entrance or exit to the east lab space. So he just walked out the door. The doors were not closed. There were doors, but so it was just open to pass through, go to the other lab. So he walked out of the lab space, headed west to go to the other lab space. And so while he departed, I turned around and I leaned against the lab bench. I was going to wait till he got back. So that's what I did. And I looked over at the window and I could see other people. And then I was looking around the room, just kind of like, okay, I'm going to pass some time here, see, what's up, what's going on. Basically, during the chem lab, you're kind of focused on the experiment. And so this was a kind of a pause, a little respite. Little did we know. So I was looking directly, and this is coincidence, it just happened to work out this way. I was looking directly at Nina Ball. She was, we lived in her dorm, I guess. We all freshmen. So Nina, I knew Nina well. And so she was facing the west wall, the window wall. So she had turned around and was looking into the the east lab space. So we were basically both looking into the middle of the laboratory area. So I happened to be looking at her. I don't know if she was looking at someone else in closer to her or something. So she was looking in this direction. I happened to just look right at her at the right moment, and all hell broke loose, as they say. The quake began, and unlike that first warning shot, it did not feel like a building, like a truck hitting the building. It felt like a big hand had grabbed the building and just started to shake it like it was a can of paint. So I was looking directly at Nina from Culver City. So she had probably been in an earthquake or two, Culver City, California. So I'm looking right at her. Building starts to shake reasonably violently. And because we're we're in a building, so the upper floors are going to feel it more. Her mouth opens. She lets out a really, really high pitched, not like a movie quality scream, more of a, like not a dramatic scream, just a very high pitched sound effect. So scream versus it's just like an alert tone. Like after she was done, she said the sound you just heard would be followed by a emergency broadcast system test. So very high pitch, and then she literally says, "We're all gonna die." And I've not been in an earthquake, so I'm like, that's not good. In the meantime, as that's happening, Kevin Cornet is to my left, because again, I'm facing to the west. The doorway is to my right, so to the north. Kevin is to my left. Different Kevin Cornet is to my left. He's a very tall guy. So he's, and then I think his lab partner, Tony Johnson, he may or may not have been standing there. He may have actually been in the other lab space also. So people are just milling around, right? So Kevin Cornet, also from California, he just makes a beeline to the doorway, because the doorway is where you want to be in an earthquake. Apparently that's what everybody's told, I guess. So I just remember him looking at the doorway like, I got to get to that doorway. So not really panicked so much as very driven, very goal-oriented in his facial expression. And he's taller than me, so I can see, I just see this tall, lanky character scooting by, like, I'm going there. So I'm like, I guess I'll follow Kevin Cornet. There was the sound of glass breaking. So like I said, there were things on the lab benches that started falling off. And because this was not a single bang, boom, like one hit to the building, like that warning shot was, the building, and plus we're on the third floor, so the building is now swaying and shaking and enjoying, and probably what is I don't even know how long the quake was. It might say it in the Wikipedia page. It went on for seconds, many seconds. It wasn't like 10 minutes, but it was enough time so that stuff was breaking. I want to say, in my memory, that there was water shooting out of something, like a water pipe had broken, and like, but that may be overly dramatic. But there was glassware breaking, and there were people kind of freaking out and moving to the doorways. And even though I was even closer to the doorway than anyone else in the whole lab space, I ended up getting pushed out into the hallway. And then I looked to the west, and I could see Kevin got pushed out into the hallway. So he goes, "What do we do, Dan?" And I said, "I think we should leave." And luckily the exit stairway was very nearby, so we hit the stairway, get out of there. I would later tell people, this is all true, but I would later tell people, Kevin grew up in Hawaii, and I grew up in Phoenix. Now, Hawaii does have earthquakes, but he had never been in an earthquake in Hawaii. They do have volcanoes, so probably if there was an earthquake in Hawaii, it would have a volcano with it. So maybe people were more worried about the lava flow. So I guess they didn't really prepare for earthquakes so much as volcanoes and hurricanes. So my joke was always, I don't know, Kevin's from Hawaii, I'm from Arizona. We don't even do daylight savings time, much less earthquakes. So there you go. We did really, so we hit the stairwell, walked back to the dorm, West Dorm, and there we go. So we were walking back to the dorm. Everybody was leaving the buildings. Of course, it was very orderly. Nobody was really panicked, which was good. The earthquake was basically done. That first initial quake, anyway, was basically done. Everybody's walking down the stairs, very orderly. Nobody's really panicking. Nobody got injured, as far as I know, where we were. So we're walking back to the dormitory end, and there were already upper class people. Some people didn't have classes Wednesday afternoons, so they were just hanging out. So as we approached, you could hear the outdoor speakers at Atomic Lounge, which is the uppermost, or I'm sorry, West Dorm is 2 stories. It's shaped like a U. The U is the opening faces north, faces towards Mount Baldy actually. And so Atomic was on the west upper floor of the U, if that makes sense. So as we're approaching, you can hear very clearly the dulcet tones of REM. It's the end of the world as we know it. We get to the courtyard of our dorm. Everybody's outside because who wants to be inside when there's earthquakes going on? So people are wearing hard hats. Everybody's drinking, having a beer, shooting hockey pucks. So it could have been any, especially like a Friday afternoon. But hey, earthquake. Let's everybody take it easy. And yeah, so nobody was really panicking. I heard later that one professor, I don't remember who it was, but one professor was teaching a class in a classroom, not like a lecture hall or lab, just in a classroom in I can't remember the name. There was a separate building. It was a 2-story building, so not much of a swaying going on, no glassware, no drama like that. And this professor, I guess for like the rest of the semester, or at least a month or two, something more than a day, refused to be indoors. And so the classes were moved to outside. The professor would sit outside between classes and do other work there. So minimizing time indoors. So some people were affected by this quake, but for the most part, it was largely uneventful as far as we were concerned. Like even on campus, even the people that were injured it was minor, and I'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, so it turned into a Wednesday afternoon, libations, music playing, hockey pucks, hanging out. Everybody's got their little war story to tell. Oh, we were in the chem lab, and I looked at Nina, and she was screaming, and then Kevin walked by me, and then my Kevin was like, we don't know what to do. Well, we don't even have daylight savings time. So good times. And probably, I think maybe the sun was setting, it being February, so it's going to be, the sun's going to be setting earlier. And somebody, I think we may have moved into the dorm lounge by this point, but may have been outside. And someone says, with a certain degree of panic in their voice, Liquorama. What about Liquorama? Now, quick backstory. Liquorama was a liquor store. I believe they're closed. I don't think they are still in business. Liquorama was a liquor store in Upland, California, where, the Upland earthquake. So a couple miles down the street. I couldn't tell you exactly how many miles, but it was would have been a very long walk. It was our go-to place when we were having parties. So I had been through one of we were the second party, 5 college party of the new semester. So we got the first party of each semester was New Year's. So it was a new dorm, which I believe is Atwood dorm. So Atwood would get New Year's because it's new dorm. So you'd start off each semester with the New Year's party, and then we had Wild Wild West. So I was somewhat familiar. We had, I don't know, like 15 kegs of beer and stuff. And this is all sanctioned by the school. We'd receive loans from the school to have these large parties, and they were basically fundraisers to fund our other activities through the semester. We had pinball machines to maintain and so on. So Liquorama, very, very popular. The owners of the establishment, I don't recall their names this many years later, but they were very nice people. They were always very helpful. So, of course, there was a great concern at their well-being. So there's probably about 4 cars were filled with eager and worried college student volunteers. We made our way the couple of miles, and I guess I could probably try to figure out, but I'm going to say it was like 5 miles, maybe, give or take, probably 5 miles. I say 5 miles. So it was a quick trip. We make it to the place, and it's a bit of a mess. it's a bit of a shambles. Now, despite obviously earthquakes happen, I believe the Upland Quake was on the San Andreas Fault. So, earthquakes are not a new thing for California people. Strangely enough, though, the Licorama shelving and whatnot was not really configured for maximal protection of inventory in the case of an earthquake. So, because, most of the time there's not an earthquake, and then it becomes inconvenient to have, like retaining wires on shelving and so on. So you get what you get. And so there was broken glass everywhere, and the smell of various alcohols in the air, and so on and so on. And so we get there, knock on the, hey, oh yeah, oh, come on in, come on. So very family oriented, or family environment, not family oriented so much, family environment. Hey everybody, hey, yeah, come in. Oh, you want to help? Yeah, thanks, really appreciate it. Blah blah blah. So we're sweeping up. We got the big floor brooms. What is it? Dust brooms? What are they? So we're sweeping up just mounds of glass. Like there's a lot of broken bottles, and the place, like I said, is the floor is getting a little sticky. So there was a little bit of a wet mopping and glass, trying to capture some glass, and everybody's being very careful, so nobody got injured from that. So that was good. That went well. The owners before I say that, the local media, I don't know who called the news. Local media showed up. They may well have been just driving around to see how people are doing. So they're driving around Upland, where the center of the quake is. And so somebody from local media stuck their head in, got an interview with our dorm president, Eric Huggins, and something to the effect that, we just wanted to help out, do our part, that kind of thing. So, local college students help out in community with cleanup. And so we got a nice little mention. Eric got on camera a little bit, and good times. The 4-hour efforts, the Licorama crew gave us a keg. I don't know. I guess we just got a keg because it was Wednesday afternoon. Why not? Wednesday evening. So we got a keg and a few bottles. So a couple, not like 20. It was probably like 2 or 3 bottles that had probably fallen off a shelf, got knocked on the neck of the bottle. So there was a little crack. It didn't go all the way through the glass, but can't really sell a bottle that is not 100% intact. So they said, just be careful. But they were, there was no damage that would maybe have put glass into the interior. There was no glass breakage. So we got a couple of things, a couple of souvenirs to take back with us. But the key was that from that point forward, from that fateful evening, anyone from West Storm wearing a West Storm, well, actually anybody could buy a t-shirt. Anyone wearing a West Storm t-shirt, a t-shirt would be honored as legal identification in the store. So you can take that to mean whatever you like, but West Storm t-shirt as identification at a liquor store. So there were nonstop aftershocks. We had a seismology lab in the academic end of campus. I guess that was the Parsons building. Keck and Parsons, sounds familiar. So the Parsons building, that was the engineering side. For some reason, the I think physics and engineering were kind of split. I mean, engineering and chemistry, I think, were Parsons engineering, Keck chemistry. But I think physics was kind of mixed through there until they added more academic space. Who knows? The seismology lab, though, was conveniently located, so you could stick your head in. For a while, I think you could actually open the door and look at the seismographs and see recent activity. So somewhere on the cylinders, there was the actual quake, and you could see it just went nuts. And then you could go down there and you could see how many aftershocks that had taken place that day, because there were aftershocks happening all the time. You could very, very noticeably, not jarring so much, but anything over a 4.0, 4.0 could be felt more than once. Everything in our dorm room, for example, would shake a bit, just enough to wake up at some odd hour. So your bed might be kind of rocking slightly, or if it was a rolling quake, then you might feel like a boat on some water. One time I was on the phone speaking to someone, and one of the rare occasions, the phone system at Harvey Mudd is worthy of an entire episode on its own. I was speaking on the phone to someone probably within a couple of days. So the aftershocks were coming really fast and pretty strong. So we had a shelf with some glassware, and so it was our little makeshift kitchen area. And while I'm on the phone, the glassware is going like tinkling, like tink 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 tink. And the person on the phone says, "Are you having an earthquake right now?" And I said, "Oh, it's just an aftershock." And I cannot remember who I was talking to, but they're like, "That's it? You're just having an earthquake, and that's all? Like, not a big deal?" I said, "Well, it's just an aftershock." And at this point, no, because they were just all the time. So yeah, the entire place would be wavering back and forth sometimes. Got to be normal. And we kind of got complacent, but nothing bad came from that. Perhaps my favorite aftershock came as a wave. We were walking back. So Ducey Gym was at Claremont McKenna, on the Claremont McKenna campus. So we would go there all the time, really. So we were coming back. I think it was my roommate Kevin. I think it was Kevin and me, but our other roommate Tuck may have been with us also. I cannot recall. It's likely because usually the three of us went down there together. So while we're walking back, it's a slight grade up. So we're walking north on this street. It's a street with cars parked on the sides and so on. So we're walking up we're walking in the street because it's extremely low traffic. Like very rarely would an actual car be driving. I don't know how they parked there because they were never driving, but so pretty reasonable to walk right up the center of it. And suddenly an earthquake. I think the earthquake came. It makes sense that it would have come from the north and was moving south. So this wave moves down the street, so you could see the street moving. And it's like when somebody snaps a carpet, if you have like a long, narrow strip of carpet, maybe on a long entryway for a foyer or something. So snap. So the street, you could see this. The roll is a wave passing through the street, right? So if you know how waves work, so the wave is moving down the street. You could see the street deflecting upward. You could see the cars moving. Car alarms start triggering all over the place. And you could feel the street under our feet. You could feel, whoa, and you know, like being on an ocean wave. So it's like almost exactly like that because nothing moves, only up and down, right? So all the cars or alarms are going off, and it was visually, and of course you could feel it, very, very unusual. People get very excited by eclipses, which to me are kind of boring, but if you're talking natural phenomena, this was I think higher on the list than an eclipse. So that was fun, and the car alarms triggering and so on. So it was just more of the same. It was a different way, but again, these aftershocks were happening all the time, weeks, months, may have been months. Although certainly the first couple of days, the first couple of weeks were very frequent, and then probably tapered off a little bit, but still, it became just a thing. I remember waking up 3-4 in the morning or something, bed. So I had built a loft in my, when was this? Freshman. Yeah. So I had built a loft in my room, and so my desk was under my loft. My loft was on 4x4 columns. My mattress was, of course, at the top of it. It was pretty basic. It was just kind of thrown together. So it was swaying a little bit. And I remember saying, are we having an earthquake? And yeah, like, okay, go back to sleep. So yeah, good times. I should point out, Kevin was not my roommate during my freshman year, but we would be roommates, Kevin, Tuck, and myself for sophomore and junior year, but they lived down the hall freshman year. So technically not yet my roommate, but there you go. So yeah, room shaking just became a thing. And this would continue, by the way. This would be into our sophomore year. It would be not nearly as frequently, but having a little tiny quake like that just became kind of a thing. Every once in a while, there'd be a little bloop, bloop, bloop. Good times. So taller buildings. I mentioned our library. It's 6 stories, I believe. When I would have worked there, I would be working there for a work study job. I mentioned I was working in the admissions office, so I usually had at least one work study job to make some pizza money. So I would end up working there sophomore, junior, and I think senior year. I worked there all the time. Easy job, get paid to do your homework. Great. So 6-story building. I was not so familiar during my freshman year. We would go there. I don't know if I ever got in the elevator even in the library yet. So I only went to the first floor. So I was really not familiar with the upper floors. Fun fact, there were shelves with books on them. The fourth floor was a boardroom and meeting spaces. That's where we would have our student council meetings when I was later part of student council, years later. So 6-story building. I mentioned that we were on the third floor of the Keck building. The sway of the building, because building structures are made, luckily they do sway, so they don't just get pulverized. But I don't know if the building was outer. Maybe, I don't know if it was a facade. It had the matching cinder blocks, but I don't know if they built those buildings to actually move around. The library was not so rigid, so I think it could move. This is important so that you don't, just like the truck hitting the building, you don't want all the energy to go into the structure and then wreak havoc. You want the structure to give a little bit. You want it to have a little bit of a shock absorption factor, a little dampening. So hopefully, I didn't really investigate this. I do know that the Sprague Library in question was used by one of the professors, Professor Duran, with what's called a building shaker. It's an eccentric mass that rotates at some low RPM, and it was in a big, like super heavy steel sort of probably like if you've ever seen a box for shipping a TV, an LCD screen, although those were not popular yet by any means. This was 1993 by this point. But if you can imagine today about maybe a 45-inch diagonal LCD screen, flat TV, the box that it came in was probably about the size of this building shaker, weighed a ton. And I was one of like 6 people that helped one time to get the building shaker. I can't remember if we were removing it or placing it. I think he was placing it. So I think we were helping to get this building shaker onto the roof of the Sprague Library. And so then what they would do with the Sprague Library was they would rotate the eccentric mass, and it would introduce some standing waves in the building. You could analyze how the building reacted to these inputs of standing waves. So an earthquake is a little bit more dramatic. It's not a constant RPM eccentric mass. It's several impulses of probably substantially higher magnitude that are coming in, however they're overlaid, superposition of wavefronts, all that. So the actual earthquake caused quite a ruckus. So from what I understand, I think it was the 5th floor, or may have been probably 4th and 5th. I don't think it was the 3rd floor. So we were on the 3rd floor of our building, and of course the architecture will matter a little bit. But I think it was the 5th floor that got the brunt of the node, the maximum displacement. And so there were books strewn about. I think some people got injured a little bit with some stuff flying around. So nobody really got, major injuries from our part. I think the entire Upland earthquake only had in the low hundreds of injuries, and I don't think there were anything. I don't think it was. There were fatalities that I know of. It could be. You never know. The library was an interesting place to be, I'm sure. Now, here's the fun part. The Sprague Library is the science and engineering library on Harvey Mudd College campus. There was another library for the Claremont colleges. It was pretty centrally located. It was called the Honnold Mudd, just like Harvey Mudd, Honnold Mudd Library. Now it's called the Claremont Colleges Library. So I don't know if I think it's still the Honnold Mudd Library, but I think they renamed it so it's not the Honnold Mudd Library. And if I recall correctly, there was like one section was the Honnold Library and the other section was the Honnold Mud Library. And there was like it was like two buildings. They were probably built at different times, obviously with different levels of donations going towards them. And then a large, not like a bridge, but like a substantial connecting walkway scheme, all internal. So the entire building was enclosed. There was no, anyway, the important part was this. One of the two buildings that made up the Claremont College's library was 4 stories. It's a 4-story structure. But one of them had a brilliant invention called the stacks. And the stacks were metal bookshelves on a structure that I believe was mounted to the floor of the building on springs or some sort of a sway scheme. And the whole entire structure was built almost like like when you'd walk on the stacks to look. And this was just so you could get 7 stories. I think it was 7. It might have been 6, but say it was 7. 7 stories of books in a 4-story building. So the floors, the stories within the stacks were a little bit closer. Like you couldn't be too tall. I didn't have any problems. Couldn't be too tall and move through the stacks. But if you needed to find a book in there, you'd basically find one of the places where the stack floor aligned with the floor you were on. You'd walk across a little walkway. The walkway was kind of decoupled a little bit from the stacks. So the stacks could move independently. They could sway. When you'd walk on them, it sounded like you were walking on an old springy bed, right? It was like, and it wasn't super loud, but you could hear it as you're walking. So it wasn't like echoing through the building. It was a library after all. It still is. So the stacks, kind of a weird structure. And if I remember correctly, most, if not all, of the more serious injuries took place anyone who was in the stacks at the time of the earthquake. So again, 3:43 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, doing your homework, going into the stack. Oh, I need that book from the stacks. So I believe there were people there that had actual, like maybe broken arms from books flying at them and being thrown around. So the stacks were swaying all over the place. It was literally like being on a big spring. So as soon as the wave fronts started coming in from an earthquake, and again, these were high amplitude impulse waves. So you're feeling the like boom, 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 boom. Like it's a lot of energy being sent across the earth. It reaches Honnold and the whole building started shaking. And so the stacks were like, the door stops that are found in some homes, with the little cap, the little rubber cap on them. And if you flick them, they're like, you can kind of imagine that. So the stacks were where people got hurt the most. I was not in the stacks, but I had been there at some point in my career prior up to this point. By the way, the Honnold Library is pretty cool. It's not going to win any, you're not going to see it featured in the world's most cool, fascinating, interesting, architecturally amazing libraries in the world, in the universe, but it was a nice spot. I've already done my episode on Meet Me at the Library, so you know my mild fascination with these somewhat anachronistic structures. So all the other buildings on the 5 college campuses were reasonably low to the ground. So I think Frary Dining Hall was an old church, so it had a spire that reached up 4 or 5 stories or something. But for the most part, most, if not all, of the buildings on the Claremont colleges at that time were 4 stories or less. Sprague Library may have been the tallest building of all the Claremont colleges. So it turns out that was probably a good move. There were basement structures, so nothing in the basement really suffered much. And the injuries were pretty minor, like I said, and there was no catastrophic damage. There were cracks in the West Dorm walls and several other buildings. There were cracks in the stairwell that we left the Keck building through. There, you could see them doing repairs. They were affecting repairs for weeks afterwards. Some repairs were probably more cosmetic, but real. Like they were actually doing these repairs, but they didn't tear down the building. You can only do so much, right? But cinder block buildings, I suppose, built as brick structures, not facade, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So all the buildings that were true brick construction were very solid in response to the wavefronts, and that, to be honest, that's probably it's probably a very different experience. All of the energy coming from the aftershocks would get passed to whatever is in the building, so the building itself would move, of course, but it's not swaying, it's not flopping around, so you could sway and flop around. Probably if the buildings were swaying, as is the case in the Sprague Library, you'd get much more deflection wherever the nodes were, and then there'd be much more movement. So I guess it's a 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. Like, do you want to have stuff moving distances, or do you want to have energy passed into things and then, whatever happens? I don't know. I'm not a seismologist. I'm not a geologist. I'm not even a physicist. So engineering, we just do the 10%. Okay, how much damage? 90% good? Okay, you're fine. So after the after action, we're coming to the end. Hang on. After so many aftershocks, we all grew to ignore them. We were advised at some point to stop going to the seismology lab. So they did. I do remember you could open the door and look in the seismology lab. They did end up locking it because they didn't want people, like everyone go, hey, you want to go see the seismology lab? Hey, what are you doing? You want to go check out how many after, so it just became a stop on a tour. It became a thing that if you're bored, and then people would go down there, and the seismology equipment was mounted directly to the bedrock. So there was when they built the foundation of the building, there was a space where they were able to decouple the seismology rig, the seismograph, and its sensors. Well, the seismograph, how was that mounted? Anyway, all of that was coupled directly to the bedrock under the building, decoupled from the building itself. However, that only meant that normal day-to-day people walking around the building and whatnot would not be detected as much. But it turns out, if you were right outside the door, so if you were within like 3 or 4 feet of the rig, if you jumped up and landed, you landed pretty solidly on the ground, it would pick it up. So it would be very minor, but to be able to say, "Oh, that was me jumping," and that did not entertain the people that were looking at that data for being legitimate data. So there was an all call, no more jumping near the seismology equipment because we were dumb. I think, if memory serves, there were 1,400 aftershocks of 4.0 magnitude or greater. It's on the Richter scale. Don't forget that is a logarithmic scale. And they were attributed to the Upland earthquake. I don't know, because, for the rest of my tenure at Harvey Mudd, there would be little minor quakes now and then. I don't know if they were coming from the same part of the fault line or if it was different, but either way, 1,400 is a memory that sticks in my, is a number that sticks in my memory. I think it was something like that, but it was all the time. They became just part of the day. Into my own future. So this was, again, 1990, left Mudd in 93 with degree in hand. Thank you. I think there were about 3 minor earthquakes when I was living in the Bay Area. That's probably a small number. The one that was probably the most sort of dramatic, I suppose, I was in Los Gatos, which is in an area that was built on bedrock. So it was in a 1-story building when I was working for SCM Microsystems. I recall I was speaking to one of my fellow startup employee people. What was her name? She was finance. I can't remember her name. So I was talking to her, and the whole building just, once again, felt like a truck hit it, because here the bedrock just passed all the energy into the building. And so it was pretty dramatic, but not shaking. So the whole building did not continue to sway or rock or roll or anything like that. So the building took the energy, and that was it. Boom. I think her name was Natalie. Yeah. My cube mate, this is totally off topic, but my cube mate, Bashar, was from Jordan. And I remember he used to say her name, Natalia, for what it's worth. Anyway, so she had never been in an earthquake for some reason. So she was a little distracted by, by this sudden turn of events. But, yeah, not a big deal. But that was probably the most memorable. And then where I lived in Sunnyvale is a liquefaction region. So I mentioned that's where I linked to it. So liquefaction region, if you have a really good, powerful earthquake, you run the risk of the ground becoming more fluid, and you could have like real movement. And the joke is that Sunnyvale will slide off into the bay because at the tip of the bay does reach where Sunnyvale is, where the Moffett Field is, where the blimp hangars are, and so on. So there is a body of water right there. The liquefaction zone is not the best place to be in a substantial earthquake. There was an earthquake once that was, I think, pretty minor that I was in Sunnyvale for. And then there was one that was a little bit more substantial. Like you could feel it. It was a good one. And I was actually in the basement of a building on Murphy Avenue, downtown Sunnyvale. If you have to know exactly where it is because you could be one block over and you missed it. Downtown Sunnyvale. And the buildings on Murphy Avenue had been not condemned, but they definitely had some inspection notices that they needed to retrofit because they were no longer in compliance with the latest earthquake safety standards. So when there was an earthquake that hit pretty hard, it was a good one. But we were in the basement playing pool. It was I can't remember what the name of the place was, but pool hall. There was an arch on, like when you go down the stairs into the pool hall, you kind of go down the stairs, take a left. You're in a giant pool hall, but you kind of go under this archway, and the archway was probably like 10 feet, 12 feet in width. So you're not like walking through a doorway, but everybody ran over to the archway, and you're like, this is a basement. Like that archway is not going to hold up everything. I think the archway was more aesthetic. I don't know if it was a truly functioning load-bearing set, because there were load-bearing columns and so on. Anyway, there was no damage, but that was probably the most substantial earthquake in the most, I don't want to say dangerous, but the liquefaction area in the South Bay, and San Francisco. So the peninsula itself has liquefaction regions on it. Those are not great. A liquefaction earthquake will feel like you're on water, so you're going to be rocking, you're going to be rolling, you're going to feel the ground. Waveforms will go just like water, much like the street I described, my favorite aftershock. So you'll feel a wave going through the ground, and you can feel the whole building you're in might move around as though you're on a boat. So it's an unusual. It is unusual. There is no other way to really say it. Since I've lived in Vegas, I've lived here for 11 years now. Crazy. And there have been earthquakes here. And it turns out, I'm going to leave this for an exercise for the listener. That's you. People think that, and in fact, if you look at the Switch is a data center in the south part of Vegas. It's an enterprise, which is a unincorporated region in Clark County. It's a little bit south of the airport, southwest of the airport. And if you go there and you get a presentation, if you're lucky enough to allow them, or they allow you into the place, they present the fact that the placement of this space, several data centers on this footprint, is safe from flooding and monsters and earthquakes and so on. But if you actually look at the USGS website for the Southern Nevada region, you will find that there are a great many fault lines in the Southern Nevada region, and that there are several earthquakes happening here all the time. They're usually lower in magnitude, so that logarithmic scale, don't forget. So the jump from 4 to 5 is very substantial. The Upland earthquake was a 5.7. I think at the time we thought it may have been our seismology lab measured a 5.5. And the funny thing about nodes and antinodes and how waveforms travel through solid objects like the Earth is, so we were close enough. I think if the epicenter was in Mount Baldy, which I think it was, you can look at the Wikipedia page and start there. If you're really close, if you're on the epicenter, that's one thing. If you're close to the epicenter, depending on how the waveform is moving, the wavefront, so as it's spreading out for the epicenter, you could be in a region of minimal movement. So we were not in an antinode, but we were definitely not in a node. So I think our measurements via our seismology lab, and when this happened, nobody even knew we had a seismology lab. Like, I think they would show it to you during, if you were taking a tour of the campus, like, hey, look, we have one of those. But no earthquake, not as interesting. Oh, I remember one of my earthquake experiences. We were taking our SNAP training, Sunnyvale Neighbors Actively Prepared. We were in the SNAP classroom on the second floor of the police building, the Sunnyvale DPS, Department of Public Safety. Triple trained force, combined police, fire, EMT. So not really the police building. We were on the second floor. We were about to commence our first day of SNAP training, and we started with an earthquake. And so the rest of the class was going over being prepared for earthquakes. Convenient. I don't know if they did that on purpose. So yeah, Vegas has earthquakes frequently. I have not experienced anything similar to the times I've experienced in California. They're not trivial here in Nevada, but nothing that has made people want to scream that we're all going to die. But who knows? There's always tomorrow. Maybe if they get really good, we can introduce wagering. And that is where I'll end this story. It was a fun time. It was actually very educational. And you know what Mark Twain used to say? I will paraphrase, never let earthquakes get in the way of your education. So it was good to have such an earthquake. It was educational without being too dangerous. It was fun to have all the aftershocks, although may have introduced a sense of sort of complacency. So earthquakes can be very dangerous. Be aware if you are in a building that is not properly retrofitted or constructed to be earthquake safe. If you look at some of the worst earthquake disasters, earthquake based, is that a thing? Around the world, anywhere where a substantial earthquake strikes and there is a massive loss of life, it is usually because the buildings that people were in were pulverized, where they just collapsed immediately. And, that's how that goes. So when people say, oh, I can't believe all the regulation of building construction, whatever, it comes in handy now and then. But yeah, I hope you have a good time if you are ever in an earthquake. And that's where I'll leave today's audio program. Thanks for listening. Take care.